No one likes to be called a bully. Nevertheless, it's a serious and widespread problem in many schools and workplaces around the world. It can cause anxiety, stress, depression, self-harm, and worse. On today's podcast, you'll learn words and expressions connected to bullying so that you'll be able to understand this topic a bit better and talk about it effectively in English. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, especially if this is the first time you're listening. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with more than 50 years between us of teaching English, we're going to help you improve your language proficiency and take your English to the next level. How are you doing today, Reza?
I'm feeling pretty good, although this hot and humid weather in Valencia, as I said in the last episode as well, is tiring. And as the day goes on, you get more and more tired. But podcasting always perks me up. It always gives me a little bit of energy. What about you?
Yep, I'm really happy to be podcasting again with you this week. And if anyone's listening and interested in joining my conversation group, there are new groups starting very soon. So if you need some speaking practice, if you want to become more fluent, more confident when you speak English, and join me and a group of lovely students studying together online on Zoom, send me an email, get in touch, and I'll give you more information. You can reach me personally by email. I'm Craig, C-R-A-I-G, @inglespodcast.com. So Reza, bullying. We haven't spoken about this before. I think it's an interesting topic to talk about, and there's some vocabulary that's very useful. What is bullying exactly, in your opinion?
Well, let's start by giving an example of it. Craig, you would like me to help you record this podcast, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to unless you give me all of your chocolate biscuits.
That's not bullying, that's blackmail.
Yeah, I guess it is, yeah. So I was trying to intimidate Craig. I was trying to get something from him or make him feel vulnerable in some ways. Because if you take away Craig's chocolate biscuits, he feels very vulnerable.
I do.
So bullying is the act of intimidating or mistreating, to treat someone badly, mistreating someone weaker or in a vulnerable position. And if you do that, you are a bully. That's the person. And the verb is exactly the same word, to bully. So I was trying to bully Craig by threatening to steal his supply of chocolate biscuits.
Very extreme example of bullying there. Be careful of that word that Reza said a couple of times, vulnerable. The pronunciation is quite difficult. Listen, vulnerable. V-U-L-N-E-R-A-B-E. Say it with me, vulnerable. It means you're easily hurt if you're vulnerable. You could be hurt physically, you could be hurt emotionally. Sometimes people say that very young children or very old people, the elderly, are vulnerable to disease, and in the case of children, maybe vulnerable to bullying. Reza, what's cyberbullying?
So cyber is spelled C-Y-B-E-R. So cyberbullying altogether is bullying. Let me say that again really clearly. Bullying. 3 syllables, right? Ing, bullying. So cyberbullying is bullying that takes place over digital devices, such as smartphones, computers, laptops, tablets, etc. Cyberbullying. So it could be, for example, people or a person might send you unpleasant messages, criticize you, make fun of you, threaten you. That means they say something about what they're going to do to you, something unpleasant. It could be Facebook, it could be WhatsApp, it could be even on X, formerly Twitter, etc. that would all be cyberbullying.
And we'll talk more about that later. A word that sometimes goes together with bullying and cyberbullying is harassment. The verb is to harass, Harass. You can see these words written in the show notes to this episode. Go to inglespodcast.com/530. So when you harass someone, then you're using aggression, intimidation, some pressure to annoy or bother the person constantly. I don't know if you've been to countries, Reza, where you often get harassed as a tourist. I can remember traveling in India and walking around the streets. I was constantly harassed by people in the street asking for money and trying to sell me something and bothering me when I was just walking along the street. So in a similar way, you can harass someone negatively, put them under pressure, being aggressive, and that's harassment.
And if that happens to you, if you suffer harassment, then you are the victim. And you may be the victim of bullying. So the person who's harmed or affected is the victim, and the person who perpetrates, the one who's responsible for the unpleasant action, is the bully. So you have the bully and you have the victim.
I mentioned intimidation before. To intimidate someone is to frighten them, to make them do something that you want because you're using your position, your superior position, to make them do things that they don't want to do. So to intimidate someone, that's the verb, and the noun intimidation. Do you think bullying is a sign of weakness in a person, Reza?
Not necessarily weakness. You mean in the actual bully?
Well, the bully seems to be the stronger person, but maybe in some situations it's a weakness in the bully that makes them the bully, if that makes sense. So bullying could be a sign of weakness on the side of the perpetrator.
I see what you mean, but I wouldn't exactly call it weakness, but a sign of insecurity.
That's a better word.
Insecurity. The way I see it is, if you're at ease with yourself, if you're confident or happy with yourself, there's no need to bully other people. So for me, it definitely is a sign of insecurity. I reckon people who are secure in themselves don't bully other people, because what have they got to gain from it? I think bullies want to try to make themselves feel better merely by the fact that they're making someone else feel worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're a strong person, if you resist this intimidation, you can say that you are resilient. Resilient is the adjective. The noun is resilience with a C, so C-E at the end. It's the capacity or the ability to recover quickly from any difficulty. And a collocation is to build resilience. You can build resilience. You can become resistant and resilient by becoming stronger, a stronger person.
Now, when bullying takes place, particularly if it's actual physical bullying, for example, imagine at a school in the playground, some children hitting another child, physically hitting them. Well, there may be people who see this, but they don't participate. We could call them bystanders. What they're doing is standing beside the incident. They're present, but they don't actually take part in it. So they see it. They don't try to stop it, nor do they take part in it. They're simply a bystander.
And people who are the victims of bullying, if people have been harassed and intimidated by bullies, very often they need a support system. What's a support system? It's a network of people, a group of people who give the victim practical or emotional support. So they're there to support the person, to help them recover and get over. The phrasal verb to get over means to recover from the experience of being bullied.
So obviously, in this day and age, we all know now that bullying can and certainly does affect your confidence in your own ability or your own worth, your value. In other words, it affects your self-esteem. So To esteem someone or to have esteem for someone, it can be a noun or a verb, means that you think well of someone. So self-esteem is thinking well of yourself. And bullies want to ruin that. They want you to think badly of yourself. Bullying can severely damage a person's self-esteem.
And self-esteem can be low or high, can't it? That's a common collocation. If you have low self-esteem, you don't think much of yourself. And if you have a high self-esteem, you're very confident.
I think bullies, people who are serial bullies, that means they do it time and time again, they know how to identify people with low self-esteem, and they know that they are perfect victims, don't you think?
Yeah, they can identify them easily. If you are alone by yourself, isolated as a result of bullying, then you can call that social isolation. To isolate is to put something apart from other things, to separate. So if the victim has been isolated, then you can say that they're suffering from social isolation, the state of being alone without any contact with others. And I think it's being made worse by technology. I think as a society, we're becoming more isolated because of technology. And obviously, that doesn't help people who have been bullied.
Yes, and it can even increase your chances of being bullied, because if you do isolate yourself, so you don't have much contact with people, but you're unlucky enough for a bully to approach you, well then, as Craig said earlier, you don't have the support network or system around you to defend you. So I think it definitely, certainly as regards cyberbullying, it's very much a 21st century technologically related question, I think.
Yeah. If you have a problem, maybe it's a problem with drink, with alcohol, maybe it's a problem with drugs. In this case, maybe it's a problem of bullying. There's something called an intervention. Well, what's that? That means that people around you become involved in your problem with the idea of improving it. So people come together, they intervene in order to try and improve the situation. Everybody comes together, as Reza said, as a support system with the idea to improve the situation and recover from the problem. So that's another useful word, an intervention.
But to start that process, first you're going to have to confide in someone. If you confide in a person, that means you share a secret or something private with someone you trust. For example, you could confide in someone that you're being bullied. It's not easy. Nobody likes to be publicly known as the victim of bullying because you seem weak, you seem ridiculous perhaps, or that's what you think. So it's difficult to confide in people, but you really need to. We could use another phrasal verb, you need to reach out. You need to make that contact with someone so that you can confide in them. So you need to reach out, especially if you want to get that help or support. So to reach out is to try to make contact so that you can then confide in someone.
And that phrasal verb to reach out is useful in another context. It's a phrasal verb I use quite often. If somebody contacts me, someone who's not in regular contact with me, I often say, thanks for reaching out, which means thanks for getting in touch with me. Thanks for contacting me. And also there's a program called an outreach program. So if you change the order of those words, outreach program, outreach, outreach, that becomes the adjective describing the program. That's when you're reaching out to other people for help. Reza, can I confide in you about something?
Yes, go ahead.
I've spoken with my wife and we've decided that the rest of the chocolate brownie that she made can go home with you today after the podcast.
Craig, I'm glad you reached out. You've come to the right place. You can trust me to do with that brownie what should be done. I will take good care of it. It's not going to last forever. Everything must come to an end, but certainly for a question of days, if not hours, I will look after that brownie.
I must be honest, it's peer pressure that made me confide in you about that. Peer pressure is our next expression, and that's influence from members of your peer group. So your peers are the people more or less the same age as you, the people you spend time with, hang out with, your peers, the people in your social group. So pressure that's applied by other people in your group, for example, for children in their class, their classmates, then they can use peer pressure as a bullying technique. So lots of people against one person in the class, peer pressure.
And of course, bullying relies on peer pressure. Without peer pressure, no one would feel that they were being bullied. For example, a group of 16-year-old schoolgirls could all get together and say, I look ridiculous. Look at this guy with a beer belly, this 50-year-old with grey hair, and he doesn't have a very muscular body. And I think, so what? I don't care. You're 16-year-old schoolgirls. Say what you like. But if my 50-year-old friends say it to me, that's a different matter. So I expect 16-year-old schoolgirls to find me ridiculous. For them, I probably am. But, I listen to their conversations on the bus and maybe I find some of the things they say a bit ridiculous because we're not from the same peer group. So bullying depends on your peer group. Without a peer group, there's no bullying. You don't care what people who are not your peers think about you, but you care very much what your peers think about you.
Another example of peer pressure, everybody in your school or in your class, all your friends have a new mobile phone. Then you want one, or everybody buys this particular training shoe or particular item of clothing. It's fashionable. Everybody has it. You want it. So there's this pressure from people around you to do something. Reza, would you say you're an assertive person?
More or less, I think so, yeah. I think I nearly always can be assertive when it's necessary, if that makes sense. But I don't like to be assertive when it's not strictly necessary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like being polite, or what I think is polite, and I like it in other people. I appreciate it. And I appreciate a certain amount of humility, not thinking that you're great or fantastic, not being overconfident, but, not being the victim of bullying either, but simply, being humble. Yeah, I like that. However, if someone gets really aggressive with me, I find it quite easy to be aggressive back to them. I know this sounds a bit weird, but I've noticed this in myself that I find it much easier to be assertive and aggressive with aggressive people. But I can't do it easily with moderate people. I feel bad about it. I can't get angry or very assertive with people who are very humble or mild or pleasant. But if somebody gets cocky with me, cocky is like chulo in Spanish, I can very quickly replicate it. It doesn't bother me to pay them back in kind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a mirroring thing. So very often we mirror or we reflect the attitude or the personality of the people we're with. So I totally understand that. So if you are assertive, then you're very confident, you're self-assured, and the noun of assertive is assertiveness. So just add N-E-S-S on the end. Assertiveness. If you teach assertiveness to children, that can help them to stand up to bullies. And to stand up means to defend themselves, to not be afraid, to be sure of themselves and have self-confidence, to be assertive.
Yes. Related to that is the idea of zero tolerance. That's a policy of not allowing any violations of a rule or law. In other words, being assertive and making sure that you do not tolerate any bullying behavior. Many schools, for example, have a zero tolerance policy for bullying. That means even if there is a very, very small indication of bullying, they will act very strictly and very severely against it. So in other words, they're very, very, very assertive. And yes, I fully support zero tolerance, I have to say.
So we've looked at some vocabulary there connected to bullying. Let's look at different kinds of bullying, especially bullying at school. There's verbal bullying, social bullying, physical bullying, and cyberbullying. So the first one, verbal bullying, saying things or maybe writing things. It could be text messaging, that kind of thing. And ways of doing this could include teasing, name calling, sexual comments that are inappropriate, taunting, and threatening to cause harm. So let's look at some of that vocabulary. What would you say the difference is between teasing and taunting? They're quite similar, aren't they?
They are very similar. The word teasing, to tease, is the verb. It could be
playful, couldn't it?
Could be playful. I mean, for example, couples often tease each other. They're not trying to make the other one feel bad. They might say things like, imagine Craig's partner said to him, "Oh, Craig, I didn't know we were going to have a baby," while looking at Craig's belly. Now obviously, Craig is he's not going to get pregnant. He's a man. But so that would be a way of teasing him, like an indirect way of saying, "Oh, you're a bit fat. Too many chocolate biscuits there.
Too much brownie."
Yeah, so that would be teasing, but I wouldn't call it taunting. Taunting is
more serious,
isn't it? So taunting is when you want someone to react and you almost want them to escalate the situation. You don't just want them to say, "Oh, very funny, yeah, I see." You want them to get angry and you want the situation to build up. That's when I would call it taunting.
Yeah. I tease you sometimes when you have a haircut, don't I? I say, "Oh, you've had your haircut, Reza. When are they going to finish it?"
or sometimes he said to me, "Who did that to you? I'll get that hairdresser. Don't you worry."
What does your hairdresser do for a living? So that's teasing. So it's playful. It's not intended to be very serious. I think inappropriate sexual comments, not necessary to explain that, but name calling. I used to be called names at school. I wore glasses. They used to call me Four Eyes. The glasses and my two eyes, Four Eyes. I think most of us had nicknames at school. It was common for kids to call other children by names, but it can be very insulting and it can lead to bullying if you call children names that they don't like.
So we've mentioned verbal bullying, although it could be written as well. Let's move on to social bullying. So that refers to hurting someone's reputation or their relationships. So it could include, for example, leaving someone out on purpose. Bullying isn't always about what you do or what you say or what you write about someone. It could be precisely because you don't write or say anything about them or do anything with them. That's a form of bullying, that you make an effort not to include them. So leaving someone out very, very obviously, that is a form of bullying, a form of social bullying.
We didn't do that. I remember at school, there were a couple of fat kids that weren't very good at football, but we always included them in the game. I mean, we might say, "Okay, you go in goal, you're the goalkeeper." Or we might choose them last. You know, when you choose people that, "Oh yeah, you always choose me last because I'm overweight and I don't play football very well." But we always included everybody in the games.
You were lucky. In my school, sometimes not only was I one of the people to be chosen last, but simply just not chosen. So you know how you go through all the available people. I'll take him. Okay, I'll take him. And then it got to me and a couple of others, and it was like, "Oh, we don't want any more." It's like, "Well, what about these guys?" "No, so you haven't. We don't want them."
They left you out.
They just left us out. Yeah.
They left you out.
Which is a form of social bullying, from leaving out.
Another way of social bullying is to tell other children not to be friends with someone. So you isolate someone. We had that word before, isolation, and you keep people away from that child and tell other children not to play with them. You could spread rumors about someone. You could say, oh, this person never showers. They're very dirty. They're very smelly. You could say something about their brother, their sister, their parents. So spreading rumors is another way of social bullying, or embarrassing someone in public. If something happens, you could point at something or say, look at what she did or look at what he did. So again, isolation, embarrassment, all forms of bullying.
What about, Craig, if there's actual touching, body contact, physical bullying? That could be against the body, or it could be actually harming someone's possessions, not just their body. Can you think of any examples of physical bullying?
There's different ways you can physically hurt someone. You can hit them. To hit, H-I-T, that's the general term for using your hands to physically hit someone and in the face or in the body. If you use your foot, that's kicking. If you take your fingers and close two fingers, that's pinching. All of these words are in the show notes, sinclairspodcast.com/530. Pinching, two fingers together. If you close your hand like a boxer and you hit someone, that's punching. And if you hit them with your hand open, that's slapping, to slap, S-L-A-P. So many ways of physically hurting people with your hands and with your feet.
And it doesn't always have to actually hurt to be painful. For example, it could be, disgusting though it is, spitting. So to spit, S-P-I-T, to spit at someone is when you eject the saliva from your mouth onto them. Disgusting, yeah, but it's the sort of thing you can see in schools, for example. People spit at each other, and it's a disgusting form of bullying, but it really does happen. Has anyone ever spat? It's irregular. Spit, spat, spat. Has anyone ever spat at you?
We used to do that all the time because I grew up in the 80s, early 80s, 70s, late 70s at school, around the time of punk. So a big part of the punk movement, especially at punk concerts, was spitting. So yeah, but it's horrible. It's a horrible thing. But kids do it.
Yeah, they do. I know. But I must admit, if a stranger did that to me in public, I would be absolutely livid with anger. L-I-V-I-D, livid. It would make me very angry, I have to say, if someone I didn't know did it to me.
Another way of bullying is to trip someone as they're walking along. T-R-I-P. You probably know that word, to go on a trip, to travel somewhere. That's not the meaning. The verb to trip is when you put your foot and touch the foot or the leg of another person so that they fall over, or they almost fall over. Then you trip them, or you trip them up. It can also be used as a phrasal verb. So to trip someone or to push them is another form of bullying, especially when it happens frequently, every day. If you're tripped every day, it becomes something that you really start to hate, and that's bullying.
Quite often they come together. Quite often, as someone, a bully, perhaps is tripping you with their feet, they're also pushing you with their hands just to make sure that you fall over. Tripping while pushing, perhaps, was a classic at my school, and it was often accompanied by a very silly attempt at a joke. Someone would trip you, maybe push you at the same time, make you fall over, and then as you were getting up, they'd say, "Oh, nice trip, where have you been?" So, nice trip, nice holiday. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, that was a common joke. Taking and breaking people's things, you mentioned that earlier. I can remember at my school, we used to have school bags, and one way of bullying was to take someone's bag and kick it along the street, along the road, or in the playground, and just kick the bag so it got really dirty, and yeah, horrible thing to do. Another way of bullying is making hand gestures, using your hand to make rude gestures to someone and insult them just with your hand or fingers. But do you think that's bullying? To me, that doesn't seem to be too bad.
There are worse things, but if you do it to someone every day for no reason, out of context, it certainly is bullying.
The last category we've got is cyberbullying. We've mentioned that at the beginning, where you use digital technologies to harass and bully someone on social media, sending them text messages, maybe gaming as well on gaming platforms when you're gaming with your peers using mobile phones and smartphones. So what does cyberbullying include, Reza?
Well, it's about spreading lies, or maybe posting embarrassing photos of someone without any clothes or with a silly face or doing something stupid, or maybe even videos of someone on social media. That's one way of cyberbullying someone. It could also be sending hurtful. So hurt is a verb or a noun, so hurtful, it causes hurt. Sending hurtful messages, or they could be abusive or threatening. Threatening means with a message saying that someone's going to do something that you won't like. Or they could be, again, images, photos, or videos via messaging platforms. Or lastly, it could be impersonating someone. That means that you pretend to be someone you're not. Let me just clarify, pretend in English means to fake, to falsify something. So you are Peter, but you say that you're John, and somehow you use John's account, and you send mean, unpleasant messages to other people, and they think that John sent them, but it was you, Peter. So you're a bully. Peter is a bully. He's sending the messages from John's account, and he's getting John into trouble. So he's doing it on their behalf, or simply it could be a fake account. Maybe Peter the bully creates an account, and he calls it John. So everybody thinks the messages are from John, but they're not. They're from Peter, who's impersonating John as a way of bullying John, as a way of getting John into trouble.
Reza, I know when we're children, when we're kids, we do sometimes stupid and silly things, but have you ever bullied anyone? Be honest.
I have, yeah, I have. I've been bullied and I've bullied. I have.
Why did you do it, and how did you feel when you were doing it?
I've done it on more than one occasion, only when I was a child, not as an adult. One terrible excuse, but I bet 90% of the planet have the same excuse, is because everybody else was doing it. Everybody else was bullying that boy or that girl, and I didn't want to be different. I thought, oh, okay, I'll join in the bullying then. But sometimes I was the victim of the bullying. But sometimes I had the feeling, if I don't join in the bullying, they're going to make me the victim. So I'd rather be the bully than the victim. I know it's terrible, and that is sometimes why I joined in. And I usually didn't feel very good about it. But I thought, well, it's better than being the victim, so I'm just going to join in. But I've never enjoyed bullying people. It was, in my case, always through peer pressure. Yeah, my peers were bullying someone, and I didn't want to be the different one who didn't participate in the bullying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I do remember one guy, Martin Bridgman, his name was, at school, and he got bullied regularly. He was always being bullied for some reason, and I really felt sorry for him. And I didn't stand up for him, which means I didn't try to defend him in any way, but I also didn't join in when he was bullied. And when I saw him on his own, I would talk to him and chat to him because I felt sorry for him, and I really liked the guy. I really liked the person, but I didn't participate in the bullying, and sometimes it was verbal, sometimes it was physical, but I didn't join in. And I have been bullied at school, but it didn't really scare me. I tended to be kind of in the middle. So I wasn't one of the cool guys, one of the hard guys, the tough guys who did the bullying. And I wasn't at the bottom of the class, the people being bullied every day. I was somewhere in the middle. So I was in quite a good position, I think, and I didn't get bullied too much. And I don't think it affected me negatively, but I can definitely understand how it can be a problem, not only for the kids, but a problem for the parents to solve, especially with cyberbullying these days.
Sorry for getting serious, but you've just got me thinking about something from a long time ago. When I was at primary school, P6, P7, primary 6 or 7, so about 10, 11 years old, there was a girl in our class and she was regularly bullied because we just thought, all of us, that she was weird. She was odd. She was strange. And there was always something wrong with her. She always looked unsettled. She always looked uncomfortable. A couple of times she would vomit in the classroom. So she was an easy victim.
Easy target.
An easy target. But what happened to that girl, for legal reasons, I better not even say her full name, but Elizabeth, she committed suicide.
Really?
Yeah, when she was about 17 years old or something like that. How do I know? She left a note saying why she committed suicide.
Was it the bullying?
The bullying wouldn't have helped, but that wasn't her main problem. But I felt terrible when I heard. I mean, I was one of the people who least participated in the bullying, you know, but the entire class participated in the bullying because she behaved so oddly. No wonder she behaved oddly. She was being physically abused, sexually abused by her stepfather.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know, of course. Kids don't know about that sort of thing. She left it all in a suicide note. So no wonder she behaved badly. So it really got me thinking, oh, God, I can't believe that we bullied that girl.
That's terrible.
With the stuff she had to deal with at home. But of course, kids don't know, do they? They don't know. We just know that this girl is never right. There's something up with her. But of course there was something up with her. Wouldn't there be something up with you if you were being abused at home? It really sobered me up a lot. It really made me think, wow, bullying is no joke at all. You really shouldn't get involved in bullying, you know?
That's terrible. So what can schools do to prevent bullying? What can teachers do? What can parents do to stop bullying?
Well, teachers and schools, I think by law, in fact, they must have policies.
Zero tolerance.
They should be zero tolerance, and they must put those policies in place. But as we all know, because we watch the news or we find information on the internet, there are cases where some schools occasionally don't stamp out the bullying. To stamp something out means to eradicate it, to get rid of it, to make sure that there is nothing, to make sure it's zero. In other words, to enforce zero tolerance. Sometimes in schools, they don't do what they should, and tragic things happen. It's really important that they do.
You've taught kids, and you teach children. Have you ever noticed bullying in students that you've taught?
Yes, never physical. A little bit of teasing is about as far as it gets, but I've always tried to stamp it out immediately, and I've been extra hard on the bullies. Maybe I overcompensate. I tend to perhaps even bully a little bit the bully to make them feel bad, to kind of give them a little bit of their own medicine, and usually that works. You know, so if I see someone bullying someone else, I will be really hard on them so they look ridiculous just for a minute or two. And hopefully they reflect, okay, right, it's not nice to make someone feel ridiculous because now I feel ridiculous. So they realize if I just shut up and I don't bother anyone in the class, then the teacher's not going to bother me. And hopefully they learn. Maybe that's not a good strategy. I'm sure a professional would tell me that I shouldn't do it that way, but I find it tends to work.
Obviously, we're not experts, so if there are any child psychologists listening and you have better advice than we're giving, then please send us a message so that we can maybe help some people whose kids are suffering from that. Obviously, Another important point to make is that teachers and parents need to notice when this is happening, need to be aware of any bullying going on and do their best to stop it. And educate the kids to look for help. Educate the children, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, to make yourself available so that they know they can come and talk to you if there is a problem as much as possible. But please, if you do know more about this than we do, and I'm sure people out there do, let us know what other advice we can offer.
Now, Craig, when I was growing up, the stereotype, or what most people thought, young and old, adults and kids, was that most bullies were males. They were men or they were boys. That was the common belief when you and I were growing up. Do you think it's true? Are most bullies males?
I think most physical bullies, I think men and boys tend to bully more physically, perhaps, and I'm not sure because for many years I went to an all-boys school, but perhaps females, girls bully more psychologically. I don't know. What would you say?
Yes, I think you're probably right. Although I think boys bully psychologically as well. But I think sadly in the 21st century, I think girls and boys bully equally. It tends to be girls bullying other girls mostly.
With gossip and...
but not exclusively. Whereas boys will bully either boys or girls. But girls tend to bully each other a bit more, I think. Would you agree?
Possibly, yeah. Emotional bullying, perhaps. That could be true. So now it's your turn to practice your English. Have you or your kids been victims of bullying? How did you deal with it? We don't have children, so any advice you might have for listeners would be really appreciated. Please get in touch. You can do that by voice message. Go to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast, and there you can leave a 90-second voice message. If you want to leave a longer message, you can attach it to an email. Emails go to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, or to Reza, belfastreza@gmail.com.
If you're a Spanish speaker and you're interested in studying a bit more, why not visit the Mansión Inglés website, where you can find paid ebooks and audios for self-study. There's a link in the show notes. Check it out. It's store.mansioningles.net.
And before we say goodbye this week, we want to say a thank you to our lovely Patreon supporters who very kindly donate money every month for the podcast. And in return, we give them instant access to the transcriptions of every podcast so that they can read every word that we say. The minimum donation is $1.50 per month. And there's more information at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
And we'd like to say thank you to every single one of our Patreon supporters, but we can't mention everybody's name. So what we do in every episode is just to name our most recent sponsors. Craig, who are our most recent sponsors?
Our latest patron is Jessica Negria. So thank you very much, Jessica. And thank you to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon. Now, we don't know what the topic will be for next week's podcast, but we do promise you there will be one, and during the summer as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell someone so that more people can listen. And until next time, have a fantastic week, and hopefully without bullying. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.